Beyond the Waves is a Hail Hail Media production. It may contain sweary words and adult situations may be discussed. If you're in the company of underage Tims, turn off the show now and listen back later. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email us at beyondthewaves67@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at BTW Celtic Show, or check us out on Facebook and join our group at Beyond the Waves. Hail, hail, and keep the faith. Welcome to the Beyond the Waves Celtic Football Show. My name is Graham Wilson, and today we have a huge show. Huge. 1-1 result today against Dundee United, and you have to say that it was a fortunate result. Let's be honest. I mean, it was just a thread away from being 2-0, and at that moment, with the momentum going against us, it would have been hard to recover. Charlie McGrew coming through right at the end to get the equalizer. A lot of shortcomings today. Let's not kid ourselves. The quality in the final third was unacceptable. It's something that's a repetitive issue. It's something that we've known about since the August transfer window closed. We don't have that penalty box striker. We don't have a proven finisher. It's a lot of chopping, changing, hoping, wishing, praying, and not enough scoring. But we will get into all of that. Joining us today also will be Yampi to give us his thoughts on some of the developments that are going on from a commercial standpoint with Celtic, as well as Dr. J from the Myrtle Beach Ball Deep CSC. Want to get his thoughts, always well thought out. But joining us as always, our wingman. The man with the plan, coming from Perth Amboy, New Jersey. It is the Rev. Hail, hail, Rev.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, sir, and congratulations on the Red Bulls winning the Supporters' Shield. That'll look nicely in that gigantic trophy closet that you have.
Yeah.
Ah, he's verbose as always. Rev, did you have an opportunity to see the game today?
I did. It wasn't too bad. You know, it was frustrating. It was very frustrating. You know, the way we played, do you think we would have had, 10 goals? One of them off of a corner, you'd think, with all the corners. What do we have, like 11, 12 corners? Yeah, it was frustrating, but promising a little to an extent.
How so? How is it promising?
Because they played to the final whistle. First of all, that was good. It didn't seem like they gave up. And the fact that there was some frustration on the pitch, but what they didn't even before the end of the game. It wasn't like, oh, it's the 70th minute and nothing's really changed and we'll just chuck it. Everyone. Chances were still being made up until the final whistle, obviously, and with 60 seconds left, Moko put the header in. So that's good to see, as a fan, to know that they're not going to give up.
They're not going to chuck it, yeah.
Right. And going into, the Champions League game this week, you need at least, I think, some sort of result. And, with other chances being made and nothing being finished, that can be definitely, going into an important game, a mind fuck. And you don't want that, right away. So, going to be like, all right, we can put something in the back of the net. Mm-hmm. Little, confidence builder going into the midweek game.
Two things that really stuck out to me. First off, I think that we're starting to see, I always speak about Joe Ledley and how when he doesn't play, we certainly do notice it, more so than I think when he is playing, because he does so much work off the ball. Today, I thought we saw how much Georgios Samaras means to this team. And listen, let's be honest, I'm certainly not Sammy's biggest fan. I'm not exactly on Team Samaras, although I do rate him quite a bit more than I did even this time last year and certainly 2 years ago. But he does get dispossessed quite a bit in attack, but he's such a handful for opposing defenders. He does in so much work, in stretching defenses and just confusing the opposition side so that we aren't as one-dimensional as we saw today. We saw Amito Balde get the start today, which everybody, I think, was celebrating when the team sheet was first put out, especially on the heels of his goal last week. It looks as though he's starting to round out into the player that Neil Lennon and John Bark think that he can be. Obviously, they've admitted that he's a work in progress, but what we saw today coming out in the start and playing up top, I think that what we have with Balde is something very similar to Sammy, where he needs an out ball to run into. He's not a back-to-goal type striker. Some very poor first touches early on in the game. It did seem as though he improved somewhat as the game wore on, but it looked as though he was nursing either an ankle knock or maybe a calf injury, and that can be certainly debilitating. Not sure how much that played into his lack of effectiveness, but it certainly couldn't have helped. And Anthony Stokes, for me, was disappointing, and I'll tell you why. James Forrest coming back, I thought was very promising when the game got going, because he's been one of our more dynamic players so far, let's be honest. But the thing that was disappointing to me about Stokesy is that, we always complain about the lack of tempo, the lack of pace going forward in build-up. Obviously the weather conditions today were terrible. It's just absolutely pitching down. There's standing water. You can see it on the television. It's slowing the ball down. But what I want Anthony Stokes to do, and maybe he doesn't realize that he's supposed to be leading the line, so often he's trailing behind. Jimmy Forrest running into the box, and there's just nobody there to support him. Stokes is maybe 10, 15 yards behind him when he needs to be running at the Dundee United defenders, stretching them out, causing them a bit of panic and opening up space for James Forrest. And it just didn't happen. Consecutively. I think that Stokes at times doesn't recognize opportunities for him to run the channels, instead of being, and I always say, we want to be positionally disciplined, but, when there are opportunities to get forward, take them, especially when we're not having that cutting edge in the final third. He was a bit, in my opinion, too disciplined, trying to link up play from the midfield and facilitating the attack, Balde up top, but he just doesn't have the finishing acumen just yet. And what we found were just wasted chances, like you said. What's equally concerning to me is our lack of effectiveness from set pieces as well as corners. We seem to go through a run, especially last season, obviously Wanyama and Sammy getting involved with that, where, corners, set pieces, we were lethal from that, and we've lost that cutting edge. It's gone back to, the Mowbray time and the early part of the Lennon regime. And obviously we're threadbare at the moment with suspensions, with injuries, and trying to nurse players for Wednesday. And let's be honest, Neil Lennon's comments after the game today lead me to believe that it's not just the players that are looking ahead to Wednesday. I felt that there was some lethargy, some just lack of focus at times. I think the players were looking ahead to Wednesday, and they didn't have that intensity, and we need to maintain that. We need to be able to maintain that in the SPL. A 4-4-2 formation with the layout today. Charlie Mulgrew playing on that left wing. I think it's probably his worst position at the moment. So often when we're trying to build up, and I understand the rationale for putting Charlie out there. The Dundee United wingers are a handful. Yes, they're young, but they're technically gifted. They're so good with the ball at their feet, and they have pace. And you want to obviously help out Izzy Gary as much as you can. But when we're trying to build from the back, and Charlie Mulgrew gets the ball down on the left-hand side, his first instinct is to cut the ball back and play it into a midfielder or back to one of the center halves. And it's impossible to try and build and maintain any sort of tempo when you have that type of dynamic. It looked like it was much more free-flowing when Mulgrew went into the middle of the park, and we got a bit more openness down the flanks. James Forrest was, in my opinion, trying to do that lopsided 4-4-2, cutting in from the right in the beginning of the game, and then as the game wore on, it looked like as though he was playing more of a central position, and then cutting out, which is a dynamic setup in and of itself. We saw a couple of dangerous situations amounting from that, but it just gets back to the familiar theme. When we do create chances, we don't have that clinical position. We don't have that clinical presence in the box that can put these chances away. Now, fair play to Dundee United. I think that they came out with a plan and they executed it, putting a lot of pressure on our back four so that, when Van Dijk or Ambrose or even, one of our fullbacks got it, they were harried and would have to hoof the ball up the park, and we don't have the ability to bring the ball down, flick the ball on. I think Sammy's gotten worlds better at doing that, but Balde just looks as though he's not quite the finished product just yet. I'm not ready to chuck it with Balde yet, but we need to find out where he's best suited and then put him in that position instead of square peg round holing it. He's not a clinical poacher type. We can't put him in the position where that's where he's going to be relied upon, because when it doesn't come good for him, the heads drop, he loses confidence. That's absolutely deadly for any striker, for any player, but especially a striker. We saw Pookie come on as a substitute late on in the game. I was honestly glad to see that, especially under the suspicion that Balde is carrying something of a knock. We don't want to exacerbate or agitate that in any way. But Pookie again looks, I don't know, it looks as though he's lacking confidence at this point, and again seems confused about exactly what he's supposed to be. The partnership just isn't there with him and Stokes, because they're let's not kid ourselves, they are the same exact player, and they need to get on the same page in terms of who's going to do what and when. We were fortunate though to get the point. I'm okay with it, as Neil Lennon pointed out, and I full credit to him for standing up and saying, if you want to give any sort of criticism, level it at me. I'm the one that picks the team. I'm the one that lays out the formations, and I did it with you trying to utilize our squad. With Wednesday coming up fast and furious, Common should be ready on Wednesday. Samara should be ready on Wednesday. Kyle should be ready on Wednesday. Bo Richter got a bit of a run out today. I don't expect him to start. He seemed ineffective at best. Maybe as a substitute for Wednesday, especially going back to a ground that he has so much experience playing in Amsterdam. But what else can you say? Getting a point and going out and playing these sort of ugly games and getting any kind of result in November. Sort of on the bookends of Champions League ties, it's not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. And think back to this time last year when we were going up against Barcelona. Our league form was absolutely atrocious around this time. Think back to away to Dundee United. We were lucky to get a point at Tannadice. We dropped some very silly or needless points in November. There was a lot of worry around that, and everything came good in these Champions League ties. If we can replicate that, I'll be delighted.
Yeah, you said it. It seems almost kind of like we might have traded off one for the other. Last year, like you said, we were horrible in the league while we were doing pretty well in the Champions League. So this year, we started off slow in the Champions League, but we kept up the, SPFL form. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is. What do you have is the parrot with you? I hear the parrot.
That's my co-host.
That's your Okay, yeah. Everybody needs a wingman. I have a big fat ginger cat. Who keeps me company here. But now we are joined by an absolute legend. Everybody knows him, and everybody loves him. It's Yampy calling all the way from South Jersey. Yampy, this is a situation where for us, us Philly fans, forget the front runners from New York or wherever else, or the people in Boston. We are in the absolute doldrums of supporting our teams, and thank God for Celtic, because otherwise it would be bleak.
Abysmal. Yeah, absolutely. It's tough days to be a Philly fan. I guess congratulations to Rev for his team winning a dinner plate.
Yes.
Probably can get one of those at the Berlin Farmers Market for like $5.
Yeah, shout out to the Berlin Farmers Market. Yeah, it's a good plug.
What's that? 4 years no cups?
4 years. You didn't even win a cup. You won a dinner plate, dude. You haven't won anything yet. What's it, 17 years?
Okay, let me propose it to everyone else. It's the regular season championship, basically. It's the same thing, the same qualifications and requirements for Celtic to win last year, for Man U to win last year, and that's what we got. It's unfortunate that it's America, and it's, everyone needs the playoffs, but...
Hey, you know what? Enough of this MLS pitch. Here, let's get some fanfare.
I had to give Rev a little bit there.
Yampy is from South Jersey. He stands about 7'1". He is just a gentle giant. That is, unless you're a hun. To show up every week, you know him if you heard him speak. Yampy, oh yeah, Yampy's got a filthy mouth. Yampy, oh yeah, Yampy calls it every week.
We're in the 16, you're out. Say goodnight, princess. You're fucking
All right, there we go. Now we have a proper introduction for you, Yampy. We might need to change up the fanfare for you. I hope not. We have a big game coming up on Wednesday that's going to have a big part in making sure that we are back into the last 16, and hopefully we can continue using that fanfare. But looking ahead to Wednesday, what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously we saw the game today. It's nothing that's going to make a DVD or a highlight reel or anything like that, but what are your thoughts today? Are you nervous looking into Wednesday, considering the performance today, and especially last week against Partick Thistle, where we looked just as anemic? Really?
Not really. I got the feeling early on that this was going to be like the whole Morton 27 corners game, and we're just going to keep taking corners and not making anything happen. But no, I mean, look, man, I can't get too bothered by it. It was a league game. Nobody really looks like they took much of a knock except Balday. He seemed like he was dinged up a little bit, but that's fine. You're looking at trying to make, this is the kind of game you want to get out of healthy, and if you can steal a point, more, that's even better. That's fine. And you're looking ahead. The big game is obviously on Wednesday. The league is never really an issue for Celtic, and you're talking about they were playing a team today that hadn't won in Celtic Park in 21 years.
Yeah.
So again, it's even if it was big shock and horror that they actually lost today at home, the most important thing is to come out of a game where the weather's not great. You don't want guys to take a knock that's going to affect you going into that big match on Wednesday against Ajax.
That's a good point, especially with the weather being what it was. The pitch looks absolutely atrocious.
Right.
You have some players coming back from injury. You certainly don't want to exacerbate that. And we saw James Forrest come up a bit lame early on. I was surprised to see him start. but it seems as though he didn't have any lasting injury. He pushed on from there and was able to finish out the game. So, fingers crossed he can start on Wednesday. He didn't look at his best today, but he hasn't had a run of games, and it seems as though he has his best performances in these European ties.
Yeah, he really shines in the spotlight. I mean, I think he's really rounding into form. And, again, you're talking about, like, you have Jamesy in probably the best form he's had since he's been a player at Celtic. You're talking about Commons coming back. Well, I always call him like the engine room, the heartbeat of the club, because it's like he makes everything in the midfield go.
Yeah, you're right.
Transitioning the ball from one end of the pitch to the other. Lenny says today that the final third looked a little shabby, and part of that's because you don't really have someone kind of like bringing the ball up and distributing it to the guys you want to put it in the net. So I mean, Samaras out with stitches. I mean, this was probably the best you could ask for. I mean, you didn't get the win, fine, great, whatever. So at least in lieu of that, you got a point, and you didn't really take any big injuries. I was nervous that something like would happen to Forster or something. I was like, This would be the perfect spot to put Zaluska in.
Yeah, you know what? That's not a bad shout. And let's talk about Forster for a little bit, because I'm starting to get he's getting my attention. Granted, in the SPL, the SPFL, whatever the hell it is, the big shit show, he doesn't have much to do. Let's be honest. And he has his best performances in the Champions League because he's far more active. But what I'm noticing, something concerning to me, is that he doesn't seem to be improving on that issue that everybody has with him, where he doesn't command the box. He doesn't come off his line. There were several situations in the first 20 minutes, where he's pegged to that line. There's balls coming in, left and right, and he just freezes. He gets caught in between. That makes me nervous.
He had the one dude, I don't know who the hell it was, but there was a real lazy cross into the box, and the dude from Dundee United just absolutely headed it right into his chest.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a 6'7" goalkeeper. You got to be out, and that dude should never come near that ball. There was a similar ball in, was it the 93rd minute against Shakhtar Karagandy, and it was one of the last plays off the Samaras foul late in the game, and they crossed it in, and he came charging right out, took command of the box, snagged the ball out of the air, and just held on.
Yep.
That's what a keeper's supposed to do. But when you start kind of hemming and hawing, and you're sitting on your line, and you got to help out your defense a little bit. You talk about the back four being a little bit soft and everything. You got to help him out a little bit and get out there and, like you said, command the box. And he just sat there, rooted to the line, and the dude mercifully headed it right into his chest. With that chance and that goal, I mean, he's got to be a little more dominant. It seems like he steps up his game in the big money games, the Champions League games. But when it comes to league play, he can get a little lazy at times.
Yeah, I think so. Let's hope that we can chalk it up to, sort of lethargy or lack of focus, because he's got an eye on Wednesday. But, I'd like to see that start to improve. I mean, Rory Hodgson doesn't rate Scotland already. And, if he doesn't show that sort of aptitude playing against, let's call it what it is, lesser competition, how is he ever going to crack that England side? How is he ever going to be England's number one? Joe Hart can have all the howlers he wants, but Joe Hart's doing that in the EPL. Fraser Forster needs to become much more consistent, and he needs to develop, to get better, to improve on commanding the box. When he first came to Celtic, he was, let's not kid ourselves, decent shot stopper, horrible instincts, horrible at commanding the box. Improved so much in the year after, and especially last season, and I don't want to see that regression. That's happening. We've seen it a couple of times, over the past several weeks, and he needs to cut that out. Woodsy needs to lock him in a room and just fire balls at him, whatever. I don't know. Maybe he needs to put him in that cash machine and just start grabbing stuff. Like you said, he's 6'7". Command the box, pick the ball out of the air. But we're feeling good going into Wednesday, though.
Yeah, I think I'm not overly concerned. I see people, saying, "Oh, this is pish, this is shit, this is that." They're not going to win every fucking game. They're not going to win every fucking game. Sometimes they're just going to play. They're going to go through the motions, and we know that usually when they go through the motions, it's either before a Champions League game or after a Champions League game.
Yeah, good point.
So this, usually they lose those games. So, tying, to me, I'm not totally shattered by that. you want a better result, but it is what it is. They're healthy. Let's get on to taking care of business, getting 3 points. Not 1 point. We need all the points against Ajax.
No question.
So,
No question.
That's if we have any kind of like ambitions about moving on in Europe, whether it's Champions League or Europa League, you need all 3 points.
No question. I mean, especially considering where we're sitting just now. We're in third. We have the 3 points. If we can pick up another 3, that puts Ajax away. I think essentially, by proxy, we've guaranteed ourselves to move on either in the Europa or the Champions League. But coming into a home game against Milan, which I'm going to be at, shut up, Rev, it sets the scene for an amazing, massive game at Celtic Park. It's everything to play for. The players are going to be up for it. Hopefully we can get some of these injuries sorted out, get a full-strength squad going up against Milan. And this is a Milan team that does not impress me. I watched them the other night, and they were flat at best. You know, Montalivo and De Jong in the middle of the park, there's absolutely nothing positive about it. They're confused. Listen, Italy's a slow enough build-up type situation as it is. And then you put, 2 handbrakes in the middle who are just they're both yellow cards waiting to happen. I think the game is there for us on a plate. The challenge and the task at hand is for us to go to Amsterdam and at least get a point. At least. But if we can get the 3 points, smooth sailing from there. I can definitely see, the path forward for us in getting into the final 16 of the Champions League proper, which is where we belong. So,
I think I think Ajax a fucking fraud. They're playing off of name recognition, man.
Well, and a lot of it's going to come down to the tactics.
About them.
A lot of it's going to come down to the tactics. Everybody gives me stick about, I'm bogged down in formations and tactics and, piss off, you Yank, typical Yank, thinks he knows better. Well, guess what? I do. The tactics against Ajax and the home tie were absolutely perfect, spot on. Maybe, one of Lennon's master strokes. I mean, maybe his best tactical layout there was. I think, going forward, we can count on something very similar. We're going to have Ledley back. That's going to obviously add a bit of steel, a bit of more of experience in the middle of the park. I would expect probably Kyle is going to be sacrificed as a result of Ledley coming back, and maybe Mulgrew in the center of the park, who to me is improving and advancing in that role and sort of the Busquets role with every game. So I would expect to see those two in the middle of the park. And again, getting Sammy back is going to be huge. Getting Commons back is going to be huge. Going to be a bit of a debate about which of the strikers are going to start. I would expect probably it's going to be Pukki, especially with injury concerns to Balde. I'm not quite sure that he's the type of player that we're going to be looking for from a tactical perspective, putting Ajax on their heels, but charging, defending from the front, putting them under pressure, and forcing them to hoof the ball up the park, and that plays right into our hands. If we can do that, if we can go with a plan and execute it, once again, I have no question whatsoever that we can get, a cheeky little 1-0 or even like a 2-1, something like that. Because Ajax, to me, Ajax, they have a very similar dynamic, a similar circumstance to what we have, where they're technically gifted, much more technically gifted, I will say, in the middle of the park than we are. They do create chances, but they don't have that person on the end of these opportunities to fire the bullets, to put the ball in the back of the net. So if we can keep it tight at the back and we can do that pressing up the park, open up opportunities in the middle of the park, hit them on the counter, the game is really there for us. So, fingers crossed we can make that happen going to Holland. Yampi, one last question, and then we're going to get Dr. J from the depths of Ball Deep. There's an image
Pride
for
of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Yes, the Redneck Riviera. Yampi, we got some news, obviously was reported in the press, and, obviously with the three of us here, Americans, we've been very vocal about Celtics' relationship with American supporters, the CSCs, and American supporters in general. We're getting word now that Peter Lawwell has jetted off to China and is setting up a merchandising arm in China. They've signed a commercial consultant to open up the Chinese market, in spite of the fact that, yes, there's 1 billion people there. There's not one CSC that's currently in existence in China. I'm not aware of any Irish diaspora in China that would be, sort of open to the message. I guess my main point is, it doesn't make good business sense to try and open up that market. Sure, it does, but it seems as though we're using a lot of resources that could be used in an American and Canadian market that is waiting here with open arms to take advantage of these things. Lowell's never come over and opened up a commercial consultant to open up the North American market. We've never had a merchandising arm. You and I mean, we've talked on this show about the frustrations that we have, and yet Lowell, once again, chasing good money after bad. I mean, it's almost like, we had a striker that was, just prolific at scoring goals, that we had in our grasp, but then we let him go and we got a striker that doesn't score goals. Right. I think the logic sort of transfers here. Your thoughts? Lowell going to China now. I mean, this makes absolutely no sense to me. We've been saying for years, open arm. I said to Peter Lowell to his face, I said, this is me on behalf of all of American Celtic supporters, putting my hand out, and we're just waiting for you to reach out and return the favor and grab our hand back. And we get ignored. We slap the hand away. And now he's going to China? Makes no sense.
I told you, I think a lot of Peter Lowell's logic is that there's this lack of embrace to the North American market simply because I fully believe that he is very against like the whole what he perceives as the Republican political kind of like connection that he feels is like part and parcel of a lot of the Celtic supporter clubs in North America. Mm-hmm. I think he's trying to find a different avenue where he has that virgin territory, so to speak.
Well, and that's a good point because, the Chinese...
China and not have all what he considers as Republican or political baggage.
Well, the Chinese government is not going to accept, anybody speaking out. So, that there's merit in that logic.
Right, and it's just I read the stories on there, and it makes no sense whatsoever. It's like, we're bringing John Park with us. Really? Is he going to go scout the next Zheng Ji? We going to get a guy who can play like a handful of games for the club? I mean, we talk about we need a striker, man, more than we need somebody scouting half of the Mandarin province.
Jack McInerney. Jack McInerney.
There's players in MLS that can be scouted. Oh, there was a guy, we could have spent some money on that plays for Iceland. That would have been real. I mean, he's not North American, but we could have used him as a striker.
And it doesn't matter where the striker's from, just as long as he can put the ball in the back of the net. But
right. I really don't believe you're going to find a Champions League quality striker in lower southern China.
Well, be that as it may, the merchandising aspect of the whole situation is really what bothers me so much. I mean, this is years. This is 4 or 5 years that I've been writing letters, that I've been sending emails, and the past 3 years that I've been bitching my ass off on the show. About the challenges that we have, and you are somebody that can speak to this as well. About trying to get kits, it takes 2 months to get a kit sent over. We have to pay $30 in shipping. And we're also at risk of having another $100 added on a tariff with it. Well, it's like fingers crossed that we don't get an extra tariff added on. And now he's opening up in a merchandising arm in China for a market that doesn't exist yet.
Again, let's go back to the whole issue I had with the last Celtic top I got, the 125th anniversary one.
You're just
it took me over 3 months. And what was the main issue about that is because I wanted the name Sands on the back of it. And they said it was too political. They weren't going to print it. And then it's like all this hemming and hawing. And then one day, after saying it, absolutely, I had to pick another jersey with another player's name. And they gave me suggestions of Lennon and Johnston and all this. All of a sudden, it just shows up. And there it is with Sands on the back. And after 3+ months of all this crap, with the emails and everything else, they finally just caved in and said, okay, fine, whatever. They made a big deal out of nothing. They refuse to accept the fact that the people in this country and in Canada, you have a great supporter base that, maybe our connection to the club is part to do with the whole idea of what the club was founded upon.
Well, and we also have the First Amendment.
Irish thing.
We also have the First Amendment here, which, we can wear Bobby Sands and, fuck the Queen walking down the street, and nobody's going to lock us up. Maybe that's a foreign concept for Peter Lawwell, for the board. But you know what? I think your theory has merit. Where I think that he is perhaps terrified of being, associated with any of the CSCs or the American supporters because, next thing you know, if there's a quote unquote Irish song being sung, then, the Daily Record will have a slasher piece, the next day on it. And it's absolute nonsense.
I mean, it's almost like he would prefer the club to be sterilized in more of like a Hibs type fashion, where it's like you don't really acknowledge the club's history. You definitely market the whole idea that the club was founded upon, being charitable and everything, the charitable arm of, like the club, that angle, but the whole bringing that whole Irishy kind of like, we sing Republican songs, this and that. He doesn't want anything to do with that. He said it before. We talked about it. There's YouTube, interviews of him sitting there talking about how he doesn't want anything to do with Republicanism and how he thinks it's like a smudge on the club. It's like denying like an integral part of the history and what the club is about.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there.
Can I throw something out here?
Go ahead, Rob.
While I like the message, obviously, behind it, I find I didn't watch that We As Celtic thing until they just played it, at halftime today. I found it pretty insulting that, with everything going on, like the timing of it is a bit skeptical, or, with everything going on, it's kind of like, here's a nice little distraction piece for you. And the way things have been going with the club, with the business aspect, with the PLC lately, I found that to be kind of, just insulting that, you're going to have the players make a video about what it is to be Celtic when the people who are the caretakers in the day-to-day of the club, I don't think really embody what it is to be Celtic.
No, you know what? That's a great point. And listen, it is all about the bait and switch, smoke and mirrors. It's a distraction. You're absolutely right. They want to proselytize and judge everyone on what it means to be Celtic, while they refuse to pay a living wage to all employees at Celtic, as though that's some sort of special thing. And the Celtic Trust put forth a resolution to have this be part of the Celtic business plan, the Celtic ethos, and it's just dismissed and sort of casually thrown away. It's a disgrace, in my opinion.
You see, like the sweat, the sweat tops and everything. I mean, it has the tricolor on the collar. I mean, you can't take the heart out of the body and expect the body to still live, and that's kind of what Lowell's trying to do. It's like you want this. He's making it corporate. I mean, it's really kind of like just become. I can't think of a better word than sterilized, man. Yeah. It's like you're taking away an identity of something, what people relate to, and you're not going to sit there and you're going to kind of like intentionally ignore a massive market like North America. You saw the shit that went on when Real Madrid came here for the friendly.
Yeah, I could get Ronaldo tops for days, but I couldn't get a Celtic strip. I couldn't get a Celtic scarf.
For a T-shirt.
Couldn't get anything. Nothing. And that's the thing that pisses me off. It's not okay. Let's take your point about the club wants to distance itself from quote unquote provocative singing, illicit chanting, whatever. But what's preventing them from opening up a merchandising arm here in the United States, making it easier for us to get kits, to be able to get it within a few days without risk of tariffs, and drastically reduce the amount of shipping costs that we have? I mean, how hard is that? But yet he's going to China right now and trying to set that up for a market that doesn't exist. You can have 1 billion people all day long, but if they're deaf, if they can't hear the message, and if they're being restricted by their government, it's a waste of time. Is this the genius businessman that we're celebrating and applauding? It makes absolutely no sense.
And really, if you open up to the American market, yes, there's people like the three of us and the people that we know that are ingrained already and have been around for a little bit. Yes, we are that element that they're not too crazy about. But to be totally fair, if you make a marketing blitz or whatever and do this plan in America and you get new fans, the new fans aren't going to be like that. Sure, if they end up going to CSCs and start talking to people and get into the history and ethos of the club themselves and everything, then yeah, I'm sure a bunch of them will get turned on to that too. But a lot with with US fans is they just want to support teams, in Europe, for example. They just want to support teams that have U.S. players. You know, you can do that whole marketing campaign here and the merchandising arm and all that. You know, you can sign a U.S. player and you just pick up how many thousands of, you know, U.S. fans instantly.
Yeah. Hey, Yampi, thanks so much for calling in, pal. We got Dr. J right up against it here. Prediction for Wednesday.
Celtic 2, Ajax 1. I think we're going to have a repeat in the score. I think Commons gets a goal and Sammy gets a goal.
Yes, I like it.
And then we will move on to your match that you will be attending. Rev has a big match to attend to. Who's it going to be? Sporting KC?
Next game is Houston on
Orange Bastards.
Wednesday? I don't know. Okay.
You know I'm winding up, Rev. Nothing compares to Celtic, dude.
I know.
That's right. That's right. Yampi, thanks for calling in, pal. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, fellas. Take care.
Hello. Yampi, calling in. We got the MLS Pish. Hey, reminder, we have Jeanette Finley coming up at the top of the hour, or as close as we can get to it, to talk about the Celtic Trust and the fantastic work that they're doing. Just waiting on a call now from Dr. J, who is listening in. Also, shout out to Tommy Gold, who's sitting outside of Celtic Park right now listening to the show. So, hello to Tommy, the taxi driver. You can find his fantastic show on Spreaker as well at Glasgow Radio Online. Love that show. Love Tommy. And hopefully we'll catch up with him in a couple of weeks when I'm over. But now joining us from the Grand Strand, the grandest of strands, all the way from Myrtle Beach, which I have termed, and many people have termed the Redneck Riviera. It's Dr. J.
Hail, Graham.
Hail, Dr. J. How are you?
Oh, brilliant day today.
All right, let's get some fanfare, shall we? Up.
You broke it.
I blame. What do we do in this situation, Rev?
I don't know. Awkward dance off the stage.
Doctor, give me the news. I'm going ball deep because of you. We're gonna breach in Myrtle Beach. I'm going ball deep because of you. Wow. Okay, joining us now, Dr. J, as we mentioned. He's the purveyor, the chairman, the CEO of Myrtle Beach Ball Deep CSC, the best named CSC on the face of the planet. Dr. J, did you have a chance to see the game today? Obviously nothing much to cheer about, but certainly can't be too upset about the result.
No, not really. I think Yampi hit all the points. I saw the highlights online. My son was playing today, so I'm halfway between. I'm actually in Colombia, but about to get on a plane to go recruit new Ball Deep members up in Shanghai. So we'll see. Oh,
lovely,
happens.
Lovely. Yeah, and speaking of which, we just we're talking to Yampi about that very topic. Peter Lawwell going to China now. This is a market, the Asian market, that I've studied myself. I take a strong interest in the business aspect of football worldwide. What I've found, and what I've read reports from Barcelona, Real Madrid, talking about the Asian market and their strategies. They actually do have strategies, novel concept. But what they've found is that the Asian market, the Asian football supporter is more interested in players. They will follow a player. Ronaldo, Kaká when he was at his sort of peak. Messi. Now we have Neymar. That's the type of thing that grabs the Asian supporter. They don't follow teams. If Ronaldo went to Bayern Munich tomorrow, all of the people walking around in Real Madrid kits, because they're Ronaldo fans, will go out and buy Bayern Munich kits. And they also want a winner. They want somebody a team at the apex of the Champions League. Yet we're going over there as Celtic, without any sort of heartstrings element. There isn't an Irish diaspora in China. And furthermore, we're trying to breach a market, like in Myrtle Beach. We're trying to breach a market that is just suffocated by its own government. You can't get a Celtic TV on the internet in China. They don't have a free and open internet. I mean, it's mind-boggling. You know, from a business perspective, it's like, oh, well, there's 1.6 billion people there, so even if we get a few of them, you know, as a percentage, we're still going to be doing okay. Yeah, that's all well and good, but you have to work your ass off just to build the story, build the process, and then what, are people going to go out and buy Anthony Stokes kits? You know, as a status symbol? People buy kits over there as a status symbol. They buy Messi, they buy Ronaldo, they buy the top players, and they follow those teams. You know, I mean, this is futile, especially in light of the fact that we have in North America, you know, dozens of CSCs, ready-made CSCs, a market that's waiting to be exploited. 38% of people in this country self-identify as Irish ancestry. 38% of 320 million people. That's a shitload of people. Think about how many people support Notre Dame who've never been to South Bend, Indiana, who never went to the University of Notre Dame, who never knew anybody, but they only support that club because it's the Fighting Irish. I mean, it's a perfect analogy. It's a perfect bridge for us. It's unbelievably frustrating that we've been complaining and we've been patronized by the club for years. Oh, you know, we'll try and sort it out and we'll try and do this and whatever, you know, and they sort out individual issues with trying to buy kits instead of fixing the, I mean, it's treating the symptoms without curing the disease. And now, you know, I mean, essentially they've ignored us and they're going to China. It's infuriating. Your thoughts?
Thank you for that. Did you get it off your chest?
Yes, I feel better now. Now it's your turn.
Well, I spent a lot of time researching this because I wanted to understand it better because you and I had a little Twitter back and forth yesterday, and I spent about 2 or 3 hours yesterday looking at this, and I think the numbers and the issues that go on are actually pretty interesting. Did you know from the the British Premier, listen to me, the Barclays Premier League, you know they get $250 million a year from their contract in Hong Kong and Singapore. You know what they get from China?
How much?
0.
Yep. And you notice how, you know, many of the teams that, you know, over the past several years had done preseason tours in Shanghai, in Beijing, all of a sudden this summer, we didn't see anybody go to China. That's funny. You know, and here's the interesting part. You know what? They don't have last year or 3 years ago when I looked it up, they had done an agreement for pennies. It was $25 million, $60 million a year for their first closed-circuit TV contract in China. It went belly up before the beginning of the second year. So the Barclays Premier League, you know, basically tried to do it, and they absolutely got blown out of the water the second year. Then they had to give it away. Now, what's funny is what I found was, you want to guess who is the biggest other sport in China?
I know.
Go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead.
Basketball?
It is basketball. Guess who also, of all people in the world, also gives away their TV rights?
The NBA.
The NBA. Because these people do not pay for TV. There's only one when I saw in China. There's only one legal cable company in China. Well, of course, because it's all government owned. It's government controlled. Well, just one small group, and it's not. Of course, it's not going to be in the middle of, as Yampi said, in the middle of the southern Mandarin province. But anyway, so I was really like knocked down by this. So guess how much? Even with free TV, they only get per weekend between 100 to 300,000 viewers a weekend. Out of 1.6 billion people. Out of 1 billion people. Yeah. Okay. So here's the best part. It's the best part. The Chinese government chooses who to play. Yeah. So can you say? I think the Chinese government just took out Baldeep.
He just got censored.
The Chinese government just. Rights, IMG, who were a traditional company, believe it or not, Graham. When I found this out, I fell down. IMG owned the rights to negotiate with the Chinese government. Yeah, exactly. And you know who works for IMG? Yeah, so IMG basically gave away the rights to the BPL so they could show select games on TV. Not the whole. It's not like we got NBC Sports Network here where we get every game live. They're getting 1 to 2 games a weekend, and it's guess who? The same teams that you see they're talking about having a shirt for Manchester United or Chelsea or Arsenal. Those are the games they're showing.
Yeah.
So I started to think, why go there? Why go there? And is it to go look at players? And I don't think it can be. So it has to be more of a merchandising thing, which makes me believe that Lawwell probably isn't on there on Celtics dime. I'm willing to bet you that Nike sponsored this thing to go over there.
Okay, but let me ask you. Let me ask you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have to interject here. Well, let me ask you why Nike would be interested in breaching. I keep saying breach in trying to get into a market that, from a merchandising standpoint, that is the wheel well of counterfeiting. How many Celtic jerseys do you think you're going to sell to be able to sell at full freight, 60 pounds a kit? Do you think any Chinese person is going to pay 60 pounds a kit? If they won't pay to see the greatest league on the face of the earth, if they refuse to pay for that, and that didn't work out, why are they going to pay full freight, 60 pounds for a Celtic kit when they could probably get it off the street for the equivalent of $5, counterfeit? How does that make any sense?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, man. I don't know. I can't tell you. So check this out. So let me give you some other things that I read on this thing. I found an article in The Economist that was really, really interesting, and it said why the Chinese fail at football, which I thought was really interesting. And the whole idea was the fact that the reason why the Chinese fail is because, and they look for it, and they said this very specifically, that they follow one player because the whole entire environment, okay, is all about how well one person works in a factory. It's all factory workers. They all work on how much they do, and that person gets treated as a god. The more you do, the better off you are. So they went back and they looked, and they said the same thing about what you'd said, and how the NBA was a big thing when Yao Ming was there.
Exactly.
Now, no one gives two craps about what's going on with the Houston Rockets, right?
Exactly.
So I went and I looked at some other stuff, okay, and I tried to draw a parallel about how it's player related versus team related, and what I found was really, really interesting. And I know this is going to sound really stupid. You'll probably get it. Guess who just opened a winery in Napa Valley? Yao Ming. Ming Family Vineyards. He is selling, and it's sold out. This is the power of one person. He's selling a Bordeaux-style Napa Valley Red.
Ooh, General So's Zinfandel.
$650 a bottle.
How much?
And his shit sold at $650. I can get I can get Screaming Eagle for $800, and that's 98 point rated. His wine was absolutely deadpan by Wine Spectre at 86 points, which means I could piss in a bottle, rub grape skins on it, and get 86 points from Wine Spectator. And he's charging $650 a bottle.
Opus
Why? Literally piss in a bottle. And he can charge $650 a bottle. Why? Because people will follow him to the ends of the earth because he is celebrity. And that's treat one person like.
Do you think that Anthony Stokes is going to be able to have that sort of cachet?
No.
Samaras. Anybody that we have. F.A. Ambrose. I don't know. Anybody.
So the other half of it that we heard was that they were going for players. Let me give you some more statistics on how much of a fucking lie that is. Okay? Just round numbers. They have 1 billion something, right? Guess how many players, youth players, U18 and under, they have registered to play?
How many?
They have 10,000 youth players playing in organized leagues right now.
That's a fairly low percentage.
China. Japan, who has 1/10 the population, has 360,000 youth players registered. You ready to fall down? Here's the reason why I cannot believe he would fly over this fucking place and give us the middle finger on the way over.
Sit down, Rev. Sit down. Go ahead.
We have, in the United States, 3.6 million registered U18 players.
That seems like a considerable amount.
Okay. The ODP program, which in the now that's all of youth soccer, all groups of youth soccer. The ODP program, Olympic Development Program, which is the underwing of the grassroots of the U.S. Men's national team, they have, just on the elite side, with my son included, 100,000 ODP registered players from U18 to U13.
Yeah, I mean, so there is the fertile market here. I mean, everybody wants to point to the fact that there are, 1 billion people in the country, but how many of them are actually going to take to this message? And you can talk all you want. I mean, the statistics that you're bringing up are exactly my point. You can talk all you want. Oh, well, a small percentage of 1 billion, would still be a lot. You have no idea how small the percentages are that we're dealing with that could actually be captivated here.
Exactly. So check this out. So let's put it in comparison to other sports, because a lot of people talk about how much or how many sports how many different sports you play. If you take in baseball and football, the number one and number two, or number one and number two, number three maybe TV sports in the U.S. Pop Warner, which is basically like children's American football game, right? There's only registered Pop Warner. You ready? 425,000 players in the United States. That game is dying.
Well,
game dying.
You watch the game. I mean, it has been dying, and it has been dying a slow death, and the death is accelerating. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it takes 4 hours to watch a game. It's turning into touch football because, as we're finding out, players, as they get bigger and faster, it's becoming more and more dangerous. You're seeing players that have been retired for 10, 15, 20 years, and they can't even recite a sentence. They don't know where they are, and that's only going to sort of retract, and when you flip it around, and I think this is where you're going, the fastest growing sport in this country is soccer. And especially with young kids. And when you add into that the fact that people here, yes, do we like winners? Yes. Do we like great players? Yes. But there's also an element to it of the fairy tale element. People here like a storyline. They like the history to get behind. We're consumers of sport, but we want to know everything. We want to know the history. We want to know what makes the club run, what the club's all about. A tiny club from Green Bay, Wisconsin, okay, which is about the size of Paisley, to put it in perspective, is one of the most successful NFL teams that's ever been. And you'll find people all over the country who are Green Bay Packers fans who've never been to Green Bay. The biggest metropolis that's anywhere near Green Bay is an hour and 20 minutes away, and that's Milwaukee, hardly Gotham City. So, that's the mentality. This is what you need to understand when you're formulating a marketing strategy. You want to attack the big ponds, yes, but you need to understand the consumer behavior that's behind it, in order to cultivate fertile ground. The United States and Canada, this is fertile ground. We've already established a beachhead, and yet we get ignored.
So you ready for the best number?
Oh, more numbers. Hit me.
For Americans, everyone played, and I know I played for a long time all the way through high school into college. Everyone played Little League, right? Mm-hmm. Guess how many Little League players there are registered in the United States?
How many?
2.6 million. There's 1 million more kids playing organized soccer in the U.S. than there are baseball players.
Yeah, exactly. Because, this sport is exploding here.
Sports exploding. And I don't... They are not going to do anything other than take the TV rights, which I guess they'd be happy. I guess to be honest with you, after listening to the last Asterix Years interview, I guess IMG giving away for free is better than not giving them away at all. Anyway, but my point is this. They are going to just absolutely rip off everything they can. I was reading the other day on Wine Spectator Online, and I know this is another stupid thing. They were caught the other day ripping off $40 bottles of wine with $1.60 per liter wines and with fake labels, like 200,000 labels.
It is as I described it, the wheel well of counterfeiting.
Stuff.
It's not. Listen, it's not a fertile market, and we've established, as I mentioned, a beachhead here. My dream is Celtic coming over in June or July, playing a night game at Notre Dame against Notre Dame's soccer team, being televised on NBC. Think about what NBC has, in June, July. It's the absolute doldrums of sport. Yeah, you have the NBA finals, the NHL finals, or whatever. I'm not sure what the NHL has in it, but think about it. They have $1 billion contract with the University of Notre Dame just to televise their own games. So obviously there's a huge market that they're trying to draw on, NBC, within the United States. Give the Notre Dame fans something to talk about in between, January and September when Notre Dame picks back up again. They could tell televise a night game, Celtic, and do the background, do the marketing. A team that was formed in the East End of Glasgow to feed underprivileged children, to put, food on the tables of the Irish immigrants, the masses. And talk about that, and talk about the linkage between Notre Dame and everybody that would watch that, who are Notre Dame fans, and they see that, and their kids are playing soccer. And go ahead.
The sad part is none of that's made up. We don't need Hollywood to produce that shit.
Exactly.
It's real.
Exactly. You just put it out there, and people will take it.
I'm telling you. Listen, NBC, and for the people that aren't in the U.S., here NBC, which has also the English Premier League, when they have a one-on-one contract for home games with Notre Dame for American football, and for that situation, they do not shy away from Touchdown Jesus, or that it's a Catholic university.
Exactly. You know why? Because people eat that up here.
Hey, listen, I'll be honest with you. In a world where, or actually in a region, let's call it Europe and in the UK and Scotland and wherever else you want to call it over there, you put all that together. I read a book called Play Up Pompey, and that book was phenomenal. How a U.S. sports writer went over to England and ended up becoming a Pompey supporter for whatever.
He turned into that nutter with the tattoos all over him and the bell.
Yeah, that guy's crazy too. Yeah. So anyway, the whole book is really all about him saying how great it was to become a supporter of Pompey and how he really fell in love with the club. And he made the comment to a Tottenham fan on the way back on the train, and the guy looked at him and didn't understand. He goes, "Well, I don't know how you actually become a supporter. I'm actually one." Now, I get that, and that makes total sense. And in the U.S., that's not, people aren't born to be supporters because there's really nothing to be born about unless you grew up within a certain, where you came out of your mother really is within certain mileage away from the stadium. But even then, a lot of what we support here, and I have to take a little bit of umbrage with what Rev said, and I love you, Rev, but I don't think we're really player related. I don't know a lot of Texas Ranger fans that moved to become Yankee fans when A-Rod moved over. And I don't know a lot of Seattle Mariners fans that moved to Rangers fans and moved to the Yankees. I don't know. I know I was a Yankee fan, and when Pettit went to go play for the Houston Astros, I hated him for doing that. And so I look at it and I go, Bobby Abreu, I'm sure he didn't become a Yankee fan when he switched over from the Phillies over to the Yankees. So for all those things that we look at teams, and a lot of the American players, and my son's team included, as I'm sitting waiting for him to kick off now, a lot of those kids, they are looking at whatever's on TV, and you have to look at something that is really, really out there and what we're missing, because I think we're not only a day late and a dollar short, as the saying goes in China, we're like a decade late, and we don't have enough money to get. The reason why we didn't buy from Boguson for Yampi is because we had to spend the $5 million to bribe Chinese to get our game on fucking television.
Well, a couple things, and Rev, I'll let you come back as well. But
Graham, remember this. The whole idea behind America's football team, which I know you don't like this, but America's team from the 70s and the 80s was who?
The Cowboys.
Yeah, exactly right. It had nothing to do with anything related to, yes, there was a couple players here and there, but players went in, went out, and they were still called that in the 90s when they had a different set of players, is because they won. And then people get addicted to the winning side, and that's what happens. And that's the problem that I see out on this field.
Yeah.
And when I look at it, my son's team ready to kick off, his friends show up to kick off, to training with a Chelsea shirt or a Liverpool shirt or this or that, and that brings me around to, TV, Fox Soccer at the time being really the reason why, because people will go ahead and they won this game, I really like them, and I am totally fucking guilty, except for the fact that I really did like what's his name, Eric Cantona, for kicking that guy. But anyway, so my point is this. If we look at what's going on here development squad-wise or youth development-wise, there's only a handful of Celtic-supported development squads here in the country.
Yeah.
Only a handful. I think of like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you got, there's one we're going to play one. We played one earlier in the year. A team from Liverpool came here. Now, you know what they're doing? Liverpool's selling the right to use their crest to be called, quote-unquote, a club, a development side,
right,
for $10,000 a year.
Right.
Paying $10,000 a year to buy all their equipment from Liverpool to be able to be called a Liverpool development squad. It has shit to do with fucking Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we flying? Just come here and set up 30 fucking academies, and then go buy from Boguson.
Dr. J, fantastic points. As always, you've done your homework. We really appreciate you calling in. Before we let you go, because we're right up against it, we got to get Jeanette Finley on for a huge chat with her on the latest goings-on. But give us a prediction for Wednesday.
I say a 1-0 away win for the Hoops.
Lovely. I tend to agree with you. I could see a 2-1, but I'd love a 1-0 as well. Just get the 3 points, and then we'll bring it back, and then we'll make heads or tails of it then. Dr. J, thank you so much for calling in, pal.
Hell, boys, take care.
Later, buddy.
That is Dr. J from Ball Deep, Myrtle Beach Ball Deep. I think that he brings up an interesting point there about, the fact that Americans in general follow a team. But I also see your point, which is, look at the example that the now dead Rangers have, where, they bought Maurice Sadu, they bought DeMarcus Beasley, and how many Rangers fans all of a sudden propped up, after they bought those players. Now, granted, they died, they went into, they went into administration, they died, they went into liquidation, now they're, Nuco, Sevco. I don't really see too many people, running around with Nuco, Sevco kits anymore. So it is a short-term type proposition, but it can't do anything to harm, the prospects over here. I mean, if we brought in, a Johansson, who I think is very attainable at this point, playing right now for Alkmaar, Aaron Johansson, who's done, great things for the United States team. I think that could raise, the profile of Celtic over here, in addition to all the other things that we're calling for. I think that was your point there.
Yeah, I just mean that just for soccer. That's a total enigma for soccer. For
Right.
every other sport, no. Basketball, baseball, no. There's no sort of like fan followship, following one player like that. And it's quite the opposite. Even if it's not a rival, you get Zach Parise on the Devils, and then he goes to the Minnesota Wild.
All right, enough of the
everyone
NHL.
hates him.
Enough of the NHL shit.
No, but but like for soccer, I guess because Americans, I don't know if you actually want to call it like an inferiority complex, or they're just so hungry and so starved for, for that like identification with someone. Like, you see them on TV, a friend, like, oh, my friend got on TV, hey, that's cool, I know this guy, they're famous, whatever. And even though you don't know this other player, but it's like, oh, he's from America, I'm from America too, yay, look at that. So, they want that kind of, that identification. And I see that with other people, that I know people that have changed the teams that they follow like 3-4 times just because, oh, this American player is here. Oh, this American player is here.
Yes.
So, it's just definitely a short term. It's very fickle for a season or two, or however the contract lasts, or that however long.
But my point is, there are other things that we need to do, that we can do to supplement that would widen the moat around Celtic and deepen the moat and fill it full of alligators, so that when people become Celtic fans, they don't stop being Celtic fans, and that's the point here. And we have low hanging fruit. Yes, we have low hanging fruit here, and Peter Lawwell ignores me. So anyway, done with that. I'm now really just delighted to be joining our next guest, or actually welcoming our next guest, Jeanette Finley from the Celtic Trust, and we're going to talk to her about the AGM that's coming up, some of the resolutions that the Trust has projected, and the board has reacted in however way that they have, and we're going to talk to Jeanette extensively about that, as well as the great work that the Trust is doing on behalf of Celtic supporters and fighting this just vitriolic, abhorrent bill. The offensive behavior of football bill, which is just it's atrocious. So let's see if we can get Jeanette on the line here. We are running a bit behind because Rev likes to run his mouth, but that's the way it goes. Jeanette, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Thanks so much. Thank you so much, first off, for joining us today. I'm so excited to be able to speak to you. I have a huge admiration for what you and the Trust do on behalf of Celtic supporters and just for the good of the club. So I can't be more delighted to have you on today. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You know what?
You do seem awfully excited. I'm going to have a bit of light in the dark room after listening to you for the last 10 minutes. You really need to calm down a wee bit.
You know what? I do tend to have these stereotypical American characteristics where I complain a lot and I'm very loud, but good intentions, very, very good intentions. Jenna, do you have your speakers up right now? I'm getting a bit of feedback.
Yeah, I can hear that as well. What do I need to do?
if you just turn the speakers down just a bit, I think it might help the situation.
if I do that, does that help?
Yep. I don't hear myself. Yes, and the you know what? The less I hear of myself, the better for everybody.
So I've turned your show off.
Okay. No problem. No problem. And as long as you can hear me through the Skype, then we'll be in business.
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeanette. Now, first off, just for a bit of background, I know we don't want to spend too much time on this because there's huge issues that we want to talk about just now. But give us a bit of background on the Celtic Trust for the listeners that may be new Celtic supporters, may be new to the show, and don't know much about it. Maybe asking, was the Celtic Trust, are they tied with the club? Are they an official part of the club? Give us some background on when it started, why, and what the trust does.
Okay. Supporters' trusts are bodies which have actually been recognised by the UK government as institutions which or bodies and groups which are they're fan groups for a particular whatever the sport is. Usually it's football, but there are some for rugby and some other types of sports throughout the country. But they're a recognition of the fact that we're not just customers of a business. So for us, supporting our team is more than just shopping at a particular shop. It's because you can go somewhere else if you don't like it. And as I've just been listening to some of your discussions, so it's that kind of, it recognises that sort of extreme loyalty which is associated between being a supporter of a club and that club, so that you don't have the normal mechanisms for making your views known or for taking your business elsewhere, I suppose.
Right.
So UK government in the late 99, 2000 began to, through their Department of Culture, Media and Sport, began to talk about, it would be better if we had, fan organisations which were set up, which were about having more say in the running of clubs, given how important those clubs are to the lives of the people who support them. And for many, especially junior football clubs or, ones in the lower leagues, they're actually the centre of whichever area that they're in, so that they maybe have a social club, and that's basically the club that everybody uses. So there's lots of important ties to the community. So it's a recognition of that. The Celtic's a wee bit different because obviously it's much bigger, and the issues around it are much bigger, and our support is much more widespread. As me talking to you now sort of epitomises. So there was an academic conference. I am an economist by trade, and there was an academic conference in London around about, I think it was about 99, something like that. And I was involved in that, coming from a work perspective, a professional perspective. But there was a guy involved in that who was also a Celtic supporter, and there were no trusts in Scotland at that time. And we said, well, we should set up a trust.
Yeah.
And we set about doing so. So we set up the trust, and what the trust does is it's set on the basis like a mutual. I suppose what you will understand, or you will know from your country, is the Green Bay Packers.
Right.
So it's a mutually owned organisation, right? So the Celtic Trust is a mutual. When you join the trust, everything that the trust owns, you own in common. And it's democratic, and it's overseen by what used to be called the Financial Services Authority, which has just changed its name. I can't remember what it's changed it to, but anyway. So it's overseen. We're set up as what is known in UK law as an Industrial and Provident Society. So it's quite a complicated business. It took us about 2 years. It wasn't just another fan organisation which you could get together a committee, draw up a constitution, elect some officers and get on with it.
Right.
It was quite a complicated business because, in essence, what the Celtic Trust could be is a vehicle for owning and democratically running Celtic. Now, whether we see that in my lifetime or yours, I don't know, but that's what it is. And so it took a long time to set it up. So it is a mutual. It's regulated, and it's built into it. Say, for instance, let's say we own shares in Celtic. We've bought shares over the years, and excuse me a minute. We bought shares over the years, so we own, in a sense, we own some assets. If whoever is the membership of the trust at any point decided to dissolve the trust, then they couldn't make any gain from that, because any assets owned by the trust have to be dispersed to charitable organisations.
I see.
So we did all of that. That was the groundwork. It took a long time. Now, that's the long-term aim of the trust, is basically to see Celtic in the hands of the fans. At the moment, it's owned, and at that time was owned by a PLC. Mm-hmm. So because it's a PLC, we engage in the business of, how a PLC runs its business, because we have to accept the reality that that's where we are at this point in time. So at the moment, what we operate like, we're not like, for instance, like the Celtic Supporters Association, because we don't run buses, but there's lots of cross-membership. I mean, I'm the registrar of the Celtic Supporters Association, as it happens. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of cross-membership between the sort of 5 or 6 main bodies, that fan organisations. So the Celtic Trust almost acts a bit like a trade union. So it represents people. Argues for, either with government or with the club for changes or initiatives which we think will be helpful to the support. We try to represent what we take to be the views of the support. Obviously, and we represent the views of our membership. But I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've probably been more representative, in the sense that we're reflecting a view that's held by a wider number of Celtic supporters than just our own members, although obviously we don't, as a formality, represent anybody other than our own members. So that's what we are at the moment. So we have the long-term aim of ultimately being, the financial and legal vehicle. Not necessarily, I mean, I won't necessarily be there at that point, and neither will the current, existing members necessarily be there, but, we'd be the long-term legal and financial vehicle for owning Celtic and putting it in the hands of the fans. But in the short term, what we're like is we're a fan organisation, and we act on behalf of anybody that asks us to help them.
Yeah, and you've done so much great work over the years, on behalf of Celtic supporters, and as you described, trying to hold the board and the PLC as it currently stands accountable, which is a vital role, in my opinion. Making sure that fans' interests and the well-being of supporters is looked after. There are some pressing issues that are currently at hand, and you've proposed a couple of resolutions to the AGM, which is coming up on November 15th, all of which were actually roundly knocked back by the board, recommending no votes for them. Tell us a bit about each of these resolutions, and were you surprised that the board reacted the way it did?
Well, let me just say something first. We, until this year, were the only organisation that has ever put resolutions onto the PLC AGM agenda, and I think we've made the AGM mean something. And the board, I suppose, I wouldn't say respect us, but give us more weight, because we do that. Certainly give us more weight, a weight much greater than our numbers would merit. So getting things onto the PLC agenda is important, because it forces the board to account for themselves, and you're absolutely right, and it allows for a discussion of important issues that fans think are important, rather than a stage-managed, company PLC AGM type arrangement, which really amounts to nothing most of the time. Yeah. So we've made the AGM worth something. I'm very happy that another group of fans has decided to go that route as well. A group of fans who've put Resolution 12 on the AGM agenda, which is to do with asking Celtic to ask questions of UEFA about the way that the SFA does its, licenses clubs. And we gave them all of the advice that we could give, having done this ourselves now for a great number of years. Now, you asked me whether I was surprised that the board voted, asked us to ask the shareholders to vote against these resolutions. Well, given that they have done that in each and every year since we came into existence, I suppose in that sense, I wasn't that surprised.
Unbelievable.
Although, and in fact, to the extent that you may remember, I think it was 2011, we put forward a proposal to have safe standing.
Right.
And just before it, we had said this to Celtic privately, because that's quite often what happens. We ask them to do something, and while they're thinking about it, the time comes round for putting these resolutions on. And there is a big lead-in time, so we have to start thinking about getting these organised around about January, even though the AGM's not normally till about October, November. Mm-hmm. So we just put them on, and for instance, if they decide to go, then we would withdraw the resolution. And I think that happened very early on, was when we asked for Saturday AGMs because we thought more people would turn up, and they agreed to have them, so we withdrew the resolution. In fact, they turned out it'd be very well attended. But with the safe standing one, we'd asked them, and they said they were going to look at it, but they hadn't come back to us, and we put it onto the agenda. And then just before it, a week or two before it, they came to us and said, we're actually quite a way down the road with us, and we have these plans, and we've got we've had all this work done and trying to do a feasibility study of it. And we said, well, that's fine, you should have said to us, but why don't we leave it on the agenda, and then you have the backing of the shareholders? And the company secretary, who was the company secretary at the time, he's left now, said to us, well, no, actually, we are going to do this, but if you leave your resolution on the agenda, we're going to vote against it.
How does that make any sense?
Sorry?
How does that make any sense at all? I just don't understand the arrogant. I mean, it does come off as arrogant, doesn't it?
I think they just didn't want us to be seen to be the ones that had to put it forward.
It's a power struggle.
Sorry?
It's more of like a struggle for power. They're more consumed with having power and being foreseen as the ones that are in control rather than common sense solutions.
Well, it's absolutely pitiful. It's embarrassing for them, actually, to have done something like that. But in actual fact, if you look over the years, we have put forward we usually put forward two resolutions. One is what is commonly referred to as the fan on the board resolution, although often it's not specifically that. And the second one is usually just a proposal, something that we think would be helpful or a good idea or something. And actually out of those, almost all of those have been adopted, but they've all been defeated at the AGM. So they defeat their resolutions at the AGM and then they adopt them sometimes quite soon after that. And we don't really care as long as they adopt them. But,
exactly.
It is a bit embarrassing for them, and it shows an attitude. I more seriously, I think. You could laugh at it, which we do, but it does show an attitude towards support or involvement in the way that the club is running, which is it's worrying.
It is.
It reflects an idea that just move along. We'll do this. We're fine. You don't have to worry your heads about it. And you might have come up with a good idea. That's good. Off you pop. We'll get that sorted. So it's pretty poor.
I mean, and they could use that in such a positive spin, to say we took in feedback from supporters and from the Celtic Trust, which has wide support amongst the Celtic fan base, and say we adopted this, we took it on board, and now we're going to enact it, and everybody can share in the positive result instead of that this was our decision, this was our idea, and we're the ones that are in control, and just sort of trying to cut the Celtic Trust or any fan group off at the knees. I just, it's frustrating. It's disappointing.
We've come to sort of operate in that kind of. So we have this really odd relationship, I suppose, with the club in the sense that we meet them regularly. We quite often get some very positive things done. Often things that people don't know about because we maybe represent individual fans who've fallen into some kind of dispute with the club. And it's in the way of these things that doesn't become widely known. So we have this relationship which is ongoing. But when it comes to sort of big public things like the AGM, then we're very much seen as being, or we're presented as being very oppositional and so on. So that's the way they do it. I mean, we are actually at this point, as far as I'm aware, because it's never been rescinded, we're actually banned for advertising in the Celtic View. I think we're the only organisation that is.
That's unbelievable.
But they introduced that ban right at the very beginning, and I don't think they've ever rescinded it.
And was there any justification or explanation as to why that was?
Oh, it was because we're in favour of fan representation on the PLC board, and they're not.
Oh, seems reasonable. Yeah. Now, one of the unbelievable. Now, one of the resolutions that you've introduced, and it's very very near and dear to my heart. I'm very passionate about this. It's the living wage. The request and the requirement, which really just goes hand in hand with the founder of the club, Brother Walford. Why the club was founded, and the roots of the club that are near and dear to almost every Celtic supporter, you could say. But yet it was immediately and sort of glibly dismissed in such a way that was very callous, and it strikes. There's not any sort of reconciliation between why the club was founded and the current regime and that why they want to run the club. But tell us about why this resolution is so important.
Yeah. So we have the 2 resolutions this year, and we have one which is about having a discussion about greater involvement, and we've mentioned something to do with the new fan sport liaison office and so on. So that one's gone to one side, but that's kind of been sort of taken a backstage to the, as you say, the living wage resolution. How that came about, just to explain to your listeners that might not know, we have in this country a national minimum wage. Which obviously is a legally binding minimum. You can't pay anybody below that, and but it is very low, and it's very it's so low that people really struggle. I imagine many of the people who've been using food banks recently are minimum wage workers. Now, there is a concept called the living wage, which was introduced in London some years ago, which has spread throughout the country and is very prominent in Scotland. And all of the local authorities, the Scottish Government's in favour of the living wage, the National Health Service has the living wage, and that is an amount which is calculated, which says, if you have this amount, you can basically live in a proper way, not just, be keeping body and soul together, but, you can exist. Your children won't stand out and look different in the playground. You'll be able to meaningfully participate in society. This is an amount which will allow you to do that. And it's not massively above. It's currently £7.45 an hour, and the minimum wage I think is £6. I think it's about £6.13 an hour, maybe £6.19, something like that. So it's not a huge amount. And it's just about to be uprated because it gets uprated in November, so it will go up a bit, but it won't be a huge amount. So we had, during this 125 for 125, year, this 125th anniversary when the club was calling on £125 for charity, we thought about this idea of the living wage. Again, I suppose it came through my work because I'm involved in the Living Wage Foundation. Mm-hmm. And I said, why don't we ask the club to do this? This is a great idea, really fits in with our morals and our ethos. We would be the first football club in the UK to be a living wage employer. This is a great idea. Certainly. So we go to them thinking that we would be kicking an open door, because not only is this a good thing to do and the right thing to do, but it would be great publicity. That's what we thought.
Sure.
So we go to see them and we say, what do you think about this? Would you have a meeting? Now, we didn't lead it in that sense. We went to them and said, please facilitate. We want to facilitate a meeting between you and the Scottish Living Wage campaign so that you can have a discussion, which they duly did. And they had that discussion, and that went on over quite a few months. And they were calculating, essentially what it would cost to bring those people at Celtic Park who are currently paid below the living wage up to the living wage. And the last number, there is a slight complication in calculating that, because very many of the people who are on the minimum wage are actually 0 hours contracts, which is another big issue, but I'll leave that to one side. So these are people who are not guaranteed a given number of hours in a week. So it's difficult to calculate what bringing them up would be, because it depends on how many hours they work. But I suppose you can work on historical figures to say, well, how many 0 hours contract hours were worked last year, and let's see what it would cost if you add that £1, whatever it is, on it.
Yeah.
And they came up with something like, I think the figure was around about £120,000. And we put that out there, and they haven't come back and contradicted that. Anyway, so we put the resolution onto the agenda because they hadn't made the decision. And we said to them, we're going to leave it on the agenda because you haven't come back and told us. And they said, no, we'll come back. And I still thought that what was going to happen was they were going to agree to this, and that on the day of the AGM, we would stand up and say, we're withdrawing resolution 10 because the club has gone with us,
and everybody would win.
Sorry,
and everybody would win in that situation.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I have to say, I was surprised. I think to say surprised would be playing it down a bit. I was absolutely disgusted when they came back and said, no, we're not going to do it. And
I was too.
When I saw what the reasons for not doing it, they're essentially saying there are people in the different sectors of the business who we can pay less than that and get away with it, and we're going to just do that. It's just, I mean, this is, in a sense, I don't want to link the charitable ethos to the club, because paying workers properly is not a charitable act.
That's a good point.
Paying workers properly is good business sense.
That's a good point. Yep,
you're right. You retain workers, you don't have the turnover, you can train them properly.
Morale comes up.
And then they provide good service to your customers.
Sure.
Which is us. And because Celtic don't really have to worry too much about retaining customers, then they don't really have to worry too much about retaining staff who will serve customers properly.
Right. And many of those staff are probably supporters themselves, who there's an emotional element to that, in that situation as well, which the board takes advantage of in addition. Yeah,
I suppose that's true as well. Yeah. And there's a wide range of people who, I mean, some of the I have to say, some of the things, only a very few Celtic supporters, but some Celtic supporters have been arguing, on Twitter and places like that, and saying, well, I don't get paid the living wage, and you're thinking, oh dear God, is this a race to the bottom? Or they say things like, it's just, it's just kids, just working, part-time. And you're thinking, well, so? Why does that mean they're not supposed to be paid properly? And these might be young people from working class backgrounds who are paying their way through university or whatever. But often it's not that. Often it will be older people who are piecing together, a weekly wage from, 2 or 3 jobs, maybe part-time jobs or whatever, and trying to piece together an income which sustains a family. And the age range of people who are on minimum wage, who are on 0 hours contracts, is really quite wide. This is not just teenagers.
That's unacceptable. That's absolutely unacceptable. That there's that much of a presence of folks that are below the living wage when they quantified what the total would be if they would comply, 120 pound. And, in light of that, our chief executive is on close to £1 million a year. Comparing his, and, I've, again, getting into the typical American, I have a tendency to complain a lot, to get petty, but I don't think it's unreasonable that, his salary is out of line in comparison with his peers, in comparison to the CEOs of other clubs, not just in Scotland, but in England. He'd be the top 6 paid chief executive if we were played in the EPL. To ask him to take, it's an opportunity for him to step up and say, you know what, I'm on close to £1 million. I'll take $750 a year. He's not starving. He can still heat his driveway, and in the process, he can make such a difference for so many people.
I have to say that the idea that we have somebody on the payroll, and probably not just one person, but on the payroll who could pay the entire cost of this and not notice it, is just,
it's disgraceful.
That's the big elephant in the room. The idea that those people sat in a boardroom, they sat round a table in our club and sat around a table and said, should we pay the lowest paid of our workers £7.45 an hour as a minimum? And they went, no, because we don't need to. We can pay them less and still get them. And I thought, you dirty, dirty bastards.
It's disgraceful.
I'm sorry, I don't normally swear on things, but I just thought it was so disgusting.
In this circumstance, I think it's justified. Jeanette, let me ask you. There's a lot of shareholders at Celtic, and I've seen some statistics where many of the shareholders they don't actually vote. For some reason, there's I forget what the exact figure is, but there might be only a couple thousand.
I'll tell you the number. There's about 29,000 individual shareholders, and I've never seen the vote go above 2,000 individual shareholders.
Right. So if you have 2,000, folks who actually turn up, where's the disconnect? I mean, maybe there's a situation where many of the shareholders, either through apathy or, they can't get off of work, or they're not all that involved in the politics that, I guess, as you can refer to it, they're just happy knowing that they own a piece of Celtic and that's good enough for them. But what if, if they're listening into this and maybe they don't know exactly, how to place their vote, or they can't attend the AGM, but they agree with the issues that the trust stands up for. How can they proxy their vote to have the trust vote in their stead?
Sorry, Graham, my phone went there and I was about to switch it off.
Oh, no problem.
That's right. I mean, I think a lot of people, you're right, it is just something that they did and they don't think much about it. The other thing is that very, very large numbers of people who own shares in Celtic are not typical shareholders. So they're not used to owning shares. They only own shares because, they bought into, the Fergus share issue.
Right.
And they don't think of themselves as shareholders with shareholder rights because they just think they own a bit of Celtic and that's the end of it. And every year, the paperwork comes through and they basically think, oh, that's about the AGM, and they just throw it in the bin. But it's actually, you wouldn't expect 29,000 people to turn up, actually attend the AGM, but it's very, very straightforward to proxy your vote. So you can proxy your vote either to the chair or to us or to anybody, and have the vote cast in the way that you've indicated, or you can just proxy it to an organisation and say, well, you can cast my vote the way you want to cast it. So when the Celtic Trust asks people to proxy their vote to us, then we have obviously agreed in advance how we're voting, and then that's how we would cast their vote, unless they ask us to cast it in a different way. But we wouldn't expect anybody to proxy the vote to us and then expect us to cast it against our own resolution. So that doesn't usually happen. Yeah. But this year, it's really, really very, very easy to proxy your vote. And if you have anybody out there listening, you can go online and do it entirely online. And cast your vote. And even if you're somebody who lives here and is thinking of attending the AGM, you can do that and still turn up to the AGM. It just means that if there's a poll called, which there will be for our resolutions, then they don't have to actually go and put their vote in the ballot box. So it's a really straightforward thing to do, and we have for some years been trying to say to people, look, use your vote, use it. Even if you don't agree with us, at least take part in the process and, cast your vote. Right. So we're really, really keen. We will never, the structure of the thing is such that the board and the friends of the board from Desmond down own, enough shares to be able to defeat anything that we do. But if we get, many more votes than they expected, or we say we increase the number of people who actually vote, that will be such a strong and clear message to the board that people just find this decision unacceptable. It almost seems, as I said, I don't like to link the living wage to charity because it's not charity, but there is an ethos, there is an underlying morality or an ethos which lies behind our club and how it was founded. And I think there's a danger that it's been turned into a corporate logo. I mean, if Celtic PLC say we're more than a club, well, in what way are we more than a club? I mean, Celtic doesn't give money to charity. Celtic fans give money to charity. And having our charitable deeds and our charitable kind of history and ethos plastered across the walls of Celtic Park and having it on billboards and trumpeting it about the place, if it means nothing more than it's just a niche or something like that, it's like a brand, is that what it's become? It's been bought by the PLC and plasticised, and that's just wrong. That would destroy what Celtic is.
No question about it. I completely agree, and I know that a lot of the supporters, a lot of our listeners completely agree. If these measures are defeated, at the AGM coming up, do you foresee reintroducing them in the future? Maybe having another opportunity to table these. I mean, what's the next step in this? If we go to the AGM, it's rejected. I mean, obviously, so much attention has been drawn to this issue. So many people's eyes have been opened to not just the fact that we're falling short of paying many of our employees a living wage, but the board's response. What's the next step after this, though?
Well, I suppose if we put the resolution and the resolution's defeated, that doesn't mean to say that we won't begin back to the club and saying, really, you need to go back and think about this again, and so on. So we will do that. I mean, maybe what they'll do is they'll defeat it and then they'll introduce it themselves quietly later on, which, I can live with that. But Why they couldn't have introduced it themselves and took all the credit for it in advance, I don't know. Because I don't really care who takes the credit for it. I just want this to be done. So no, it won't go away. And I know that what they've said to the Scottish Living Wage campaign is that they'll keep the lines of communication open. So I don't know what that means, but I suppose it means they'll continue to talk to them about it and look forward to it. I mean, this is something which very many private sector employers in England, companies like KPMG, these huge companies who pay the living wage, and they see it as being sound business, good employment practice, which is good for their business. They don't see it as being a charitable act.
Right.
And why Celtic can't just buy into that even, I just don't understand that. And I think it's a terrible own goal almost for them to have done this and let this go public. Why would you embarrass yourself like that?
I think that maybe they are playing on, the apathy that they perceive. I mean, I think that there's a consistent theme here where, the board does take advantage of the loyalty, of the support. We were just talking, and I went off on one of my classic rants about, how the supporters here in North America are, taken advantage of. But I think that that's just the general attitude, that the supporters are going to turn up, they're going to buy strips, and no matter what, we can raise the season book prices, we can make the strips, the cost of all the strips, £60 and release a new one every season, and they'll keep buying them, they'll keep turning up. But there tends to be a breaking point. But even worse than that, it just pollutes everything the club is supposed to be about. It's incredibly, it's hurtful. Yeah, do you hear me?
Sorry, I thought you kind of went there. Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree with you. But if there are people out there listening and they have the original share certificates, then there's a very straightforward step-by-step guide on the Celtic Trust website, which is Celtic Trust .net, www.celtictrust, all one word, .net, N-E-T.
Fantastic.
And there's a step-by-step guide to how you proxy your vote. So if you want to cast your vote, you can do that. And you can do that right up to the 14th of November.
Fantastic.
The AGM's on the 15th. So you can do that, any time up to the 14th. So you've got a couple of weeks yet. If you don't have the original share certificates, but you know that you own shares, then also on that site you'll see contact details for Computershare, who are the Celtic PLC registrars. If you contact them, then they'll be able to sort out, because you may have changed address or something like that, and your AGM notice has not been sent to you, something like that. If you do that, then you can, access your AGM papers and be able to cast your vote. So there is time yet, but sometime in the next week, I'd really encourage people to get in touch with Computershare if you don't have the details that you need, or if you have your shareholder registration number, then go online and you'll find all the information on the Celtic Trust site. And it's a way in which, Celtic supporters beyond Glasgow and beyond Scotland can actually really get involved in what's happening with the club and what's happening with other supporters. It's a way for them to join with other supporters in what is really a very important issue.
No question about it. That's fantastic. I encourage everybody, who's a shareholder who wants to proxy their votes to the trust to go ahead and visit theceltictrust.net. I went on there last night. It's very straightforward, very easy to follow. And, again, like Jeanette said, even if, you don't agree or you don't want to vote on these resolutions in agreement with the Celtic Trust, vote on your own. But, certainly if you do agree with these resolutions that the trust has put forward, you can proxy your votes. That way, they can vote on your behalf. It's very easy to use. And, we can all make our voice heard, which I think is really the goal here. We need to do as much as possible to let this PLC know that, the fans, we are paying attention and they do need to be accountable to us. And, there's so many just sort of incendiary issues that are floating about just now. One of them, and another, issue that you and the trust are doing such great work with. And I always think back to your speech at George Square. I wasn't there, but I saw it on YouTube. It was incredibly inspiring. Talking about the offensive behavior at Football Bill, that has many of our supporters locked up for singing a song, or sometimes not even singing a song, but on suspicion of singing a song that, is deemed to be offensive by whoever that particular officer is. It's a complete mess of a bill. It's really ruining people's lives, and it's completely archaic. But you're doing great work in trying to get exposure to how bad this bill is, and try and get it repealed. What's the latest on your efforts just now, and what should everybody be doing to try and get this bill stricken from the record?
Okay, no, you're absolutely right. It is an absolutely dreadful piece of legislation. I think it shames Scotland, to be honest, to have such a legislation like that, which is so illiberal. Really restricts your right to hold political beliefs. I mean, we even had the Lord Advocate, who's the most senior legal officer. He's government. I think he's a government employee or a government appointee, but anyway, he's a senior legal officer, saying in answer, could an Irish Republican identity be illegal under this Act? And he said yes. No. So we've now criminalised an identity. So it would appear that Scottish society and the establishment, the press, and the politicians looked to kind of sectarianise Irishness and Irish identity. Now they're criminalising it.
Exactly.
So it's a dreadful thing. So we fought it before it came in. It came in, and we fought it ever since. And one of the things that we did, starting this week, on Tuesday, we launched an email campaign asking people to contact their MSPs, that's a member of the Scottish Parliament, to ask them to push for an early review of the Act. When the Act was passed, there was a sort of a sunset clause built into it, which said it had to be reviewed at some point to see whether it was fit for purpose and it was doing the job that it was meant to do. And that is not until at least the end of 2014-15 season, so a couple of years to go yet, and we just think, no, you can't allow this to go on any longer. No. So we're asking them to call on the Justice Committee, which is a committee of the Scottish Parliament, to review the bill early. So we set up a wee email template, which it meant that people could come on the Celtic Trust site. It's a FAC initiative, but it's set up on the Celtic Trust site. And they just put in their postcode, and it generates all of their representatives, so the local representatives in Parliament, and allows them to send an email saying, please, this is why this Act is not working. Please encourage your party and your colleagues to call for an early review of the Act. And so we launched that on Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, and I think there's been about 7,500 emails sent since then. And as a result of that, what we just found out yesterday at lunchtime was that the Justice Committee, who were due to meet on this Tuesday coming, the 5th of November, have put the bill and the discussion of an early review onto their agenda. Now that's a big move for them to do that, to react after only a few days of being inundated by emails. So that's good.
Yes.
And the other thing that's happened is the governing party in Scotland, as many of your listeners will know, is the Scottish National Party. Mm-hmm. And that is a party in which there is very little dissent as far as I can see, or certainly no visible dissent. And despite the fact that, it was absolutely clear that very many people inside that party must have known that this bill was dreadful, nobody spoke out in public, nobody broke ranks. I think Alex Salmond, who's the First Minister and the leader of that party, rules that party when iron rod. I don't know if there's much in the way of, debate and discussion. There's certainly no public dissent.
And he's a Jambo.
Sorry?
And he's a Jambo.
Yeah, well, there's that as well. And he, I'll tell you a funny story about him in a minute if you like. But he, one member of the SNP has now written to the Justice Committee and replied to a constituent saying that they've written to the Justice Committee and asked for an early review. Now that might not seem like much to have one person breaking ranks, but also there seems to be out there some understanding from some of the, SNP members, in other, maybe there's been a couple of councillors and other people saying, look, we need to look at this. We really need to start looking at it. And the other issue, which is getting very mixed in with this, it's become very political, is because obviously Scotland has an independence referendum in 2014.
Sure.
And there are many people saying, rightly or wrongly, the fact that the SNP government introduced this act and the way that Celtic fans and the way that have been treated and the way that Irishness has almost been criminalised makes me very fearful of an independent Scotland, and therefore I'm going to vote no. And so, whether you think that's right or wrong, the fact of the matter is people they're raising concerns around this act. And quite often you get this, I've had SNP people or yes voters saying to me, yes independence voters saying to me, you shouldn't be raising this because this is creating problems for the independence referendum and we'll all be better off under independence. And I say, well, if you think that this act is causing problems potentially for the independence referendum, which I think it is, why don't you put pressure on the SNP to get it abolished?
Right.
Get rid of it, and then we'll shut up.
Right, exactly.
So get rid of it, and then we can talk about the things that actually really matter, because clearly some really very important issues coming up for people in Scotland. So, get rid of this piece of nonsense and let us discuss important things. About the way that people are, living their lives and the dreadful circumstances that some of our members of our society and our people in our nation are living in.
Right.
We shouldn't be talking about whether somebody wants to sing a song about the hunger strikers.
It's absolute nonsense. I just can't make any sense of it. When, to your point, there's so many more important issues. And, when you're talking about the SNP, I mean, this is them needing to be accountable. If Scotland wants to be self-governing, they need to be accountable to the citizens, to the people. And what we're doing right now, what you're leading, with the emails being sent and, the people speaking out about it, that's exactly what needs to happen. In addition to the emails, what else can people do? I mean, obviously we can see the byproducts and, of this law and how bad it is and people getting locked up and spending weekends in jail, and it affects their entire life for nothing. I mean, what else can we do to try and mobilize? I mean, this needs to be an organized effort.
Well, I think we may have an opportunity just at this point to put maximum pressure. Now, clearly, the SNP are not beyond taking advice from people beyond our shores. They'll quite often talk to people like Sean Connery, who doesn't live in this country either. So, it's possible for, again, your listeners who don't live in Scotland to go onto our website. Now, obviously, they don't have a Scottish postcode, so they won't have an MSP, but they can write to the ministers. Mm-hmm. They can write to Alex Salmond, the First Minister. They can write to Kenny McCaskill, who's the Justice Minister. I'm not really sure who he gets justice for, but it's not for us. And you can write to Rosanna Cunningham, who's the the Legal and Community Safety Minister. I don't know which community she's keeping safe, but it's not ours. But you can write to those three people, or you can write to Christine Graham, who's the convener of the Justice Committee.
Oh yeah, Christine Graham, yeah.
You can write to those people and say, almost like, what you can do? You can do it as almost like it's like an amnesty campaign. The way we write to, foreign governments and leaders and say, you treat your citizens really badly, please stop it.
Exactly.
You can do it like that.
Well, I mean, but it applies here. I mean, you talk about Christine Graham, and when this bill was being debated and lobbied, talking about trying to even things up. I mean, she spoke about this bill in the context of the relationship that Celtic had with Rangers. Well, Rangers are dead now, and, it's not just Celtic fans that are getting, locked up for this or kettled, or, I mean, this affects a lot of people, not just people of Irish identity or Celtic fans.
No, that's absolutely right. The police use this act in lots of circumstances where they previously would have used other legislation. And they told us that they were being told by the fiscals, which is the prosecuting authorities, to use that act rather than the old Section 74 offences like breach of the peace with religious aggravation or anything like that. So the police are using that act against people in all sorts of circumstances. Let's be honest, there is not a police force in the world that doesn't like having more power, and this gave them an additional power. But more than that, it gave them an additional funding stream because they take a huge proportion of the anti-sectarian budget.
Right, exactly.
So it's a funding stream for them, and it's more powers for them. So, and therefore they're using it against all sorts of people. not just Celtic fans, but the reality is Celtic fans would not and could not be convicted under the legislation which was in place to combat racism and sectarianism.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because, by and large, we're no bigots and we're no racists. But they are now being... the Crown even had to go to the extremes of appealing a not guilty verdict for somebody singing Roll of Honour in order to get an appeal court judgment, which is now written in such a way that once a sheriff, that's the judge in the court that would hear this,
right.
Once a sheriff has been presented with evidence, incontrovertible evidence that somebody actually sang the song, and we're talking about the song Roll of Honour, they must find them guilty. So the way the appeal court... I mean, if anybody's interested in this, any of your listeners who... you don't have to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, and I was able to read it. Look, do a Google search on appeal court judgment Joseph Cairns, Cairns. Now, that was the case that they appealed. And if you read that, you will see that it says that if someone sings a song, in the law, usually you talk about the reasonable person. Would this be offensive to the reasonable person, or would this be an issue for how would the reasonable person? They used to talk about the man on the Clapham omnibus, so it's just some general person.
Right.
Would this be something which would be an issue for them? And that's quite a common concept that's used in the law. They said, we're not talking about the reasonable person. We're talking about the more volatile person, somebody who may have taken the trouble to know the words of these songs and to be offended by them. And not only are we talking about that person, so we're making laws for bampots now instead of normal people.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only are we talking about that person, but that person doesn't have to be there. And not only that person doesn't have to find out about it later for it still to be an offence under the Act. So,
I mean, well, what are we dealing with here? This is absolute nonsense. Christine Graham essentially got her wish, where everything, as you described it, everything's evened up now, where Celtic supporters can be prosecuted just as easily, and actually the population in general can be prosecuted much more easily. And when they are prosecuted, it's much more easy to find them guilty through some sort of legalese or vague language with it. I mean, it's maddening. It's maddening. I mean, whatever we can do to stop this, to strike it down as soon as possible. We knew that these sorts of issues were going to come up when the bill was first put forward, and now they've come to pass. We have to do something to get this taken off the rolls as soon as possible.
Time's important here. This Justice Committee meeting on Tuesday is really quite important, and not be the be-all and end-all, but it is quite important. And if any of your listeners want to, write to the ministers or write to the Justice Committee and say, we understand that you have a law in your country where your citizens are treated like this, and we think this is dreadful, and we think it shames Scotland in exactly the same way that Amnesty writes letters, asks us all to write letters to dictatorships and says, stop locking up your people for nothing and all of that sort of thing. Write to the Scottish ministers in exactly those terms, or write to the Justice Committee, but please do it as soon as you can. And honestly, if you have any lawyers out there, have a look at that appeal court judgment, because they will be astounded. They will be astonished that, a democratic country like Scotland, a modern democracy, would have a law like that. And so time is of the essence. So if you've got 10 minutes tomorrow or Monday, send an email. The email addresses of all of the members of the Scottish Parliament. In fact, the email addresses of all of the members of the Justice Committee are currently on a page in the Celtic Trust website. But the email addresses of all the ministers and so on, you simply write to them all under the same email address. It's scottish.ministers@scottish.parliament.uk.
Perfect.
And you can write to them and you can tell them exactly, you're sitting, in America or in Canada or anywhere else that you might be, and say you're astonished to hear that you thought Scotland was a democracy, and you're astonished to hear what's happening.
Yeah, and I know that we're going to do that, right away, to make our voices heard, because it's astonishing as an American, where we take the First Amendment over here, the freedom of speech. I mean, to think that singing a song could get you lifted is such a foreign concept for us here. And like you described, for a democratic society that is yearning for independence, that's on the cusp of being, a self-governing country in the world. It's astonishing, but I know that myself and everybody listening are going to make our voices heard as well, because there's loads of people who may not be Scottish, may not live in Scotland, but we have a lot of passion for the Scottish people, for Celtic, and we just hate seeing our own supporters getting lifted for just nonsense like this. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious. So I know that we'll get on this, but Jeanette, thank you so much for everything that you do. I mean, just in terms of holding the board accountable and looking out for our own supporters. I mean, I know it's a thankless job a lot of the time, but you do it, and you do it extremely well. Again, watching your YouTube clip, I was so inspired, and I'm so inspired by hearing what you're doing, the movement that you're leading. You're sharp, you're genuine about it, you're smart as a tack. I'm mixing all sorts of metaphors, and I'm absolutely destroying them. And I've a huge regard for you, so please keep up the great work with that. And thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, and you can enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening, how can folk who want to support the Celtic Trust join up with your cause? I mean, is it right there on the website?
Yeah, you can just join. We've got a lot of members in other countries, yeah.
Fantastic.
And you get all the mails. Can I tell you my funny story about Alex Salmond before I go?
Oh, yeah, yes, please.
Right. About 6 years ago, I did a radio interview on the morning after a Celtic PLC AGM when John Reid was elected as chairman.
Right.
And as a result of that, it was... I'm not going to go back what it was, but the interviewer was saying something about, these songs in support of terrorism, and I was sort of saying, the use of the word terrorist, I wouldn't necessarily use that term, and all of that. Anyway, there was that sort of discussion. And what happened was all hell broke loose, and I ended up being completely bombarded in the press, and people were writing to my employers and asking them to sack me, and I had journalists for the Daily Record outside my house when I was trying to take my son to school, and I had threats. It just went on for about 10 days. It was an absolute nightmare.
Unbelievable.
Anyway, for the year following that, I went round every single organisation and individual who had said anything, who had implied that I had in any way said anything, because they were calling me a bigot, they were calling me everything. Right, anyway, so I went round them all and got retractions, just made them all retracted.
Good for you.
Took me a year. The last person I got to was Alex Salmond. I had been demanding a meeting with the First Minister because his government spokesperson had said, Finlay's views are repulsive and have no place in a modern Scotland. I can still repeat that verbatim. That's what he said. Finlay's views are repulsive and have no place in a modern Scotland. Anyway, so I demanded a meeting, and eventually, through the good offices of my own MSP, I did eventually get a meeting with him. And I always remember it because it was the day that Obama was inaugurated.
Oh, yeah.
And so everybody in the Parliament building was on, they were watching it on the telly and everything, and we were kept waiting. Anyway, so I go in for this meeting, and we have the discussion, and I say to him, this is what happened, and he says, oh, well, it wasn't me that said it, and it wasn't, this was just a request for a journalist. And I said, so a journalist writes to you, phones you up and asks you to make a comment about a citizen, and you just release a statement like that. So he agrees that this was wrong. And he said, and I'll write this letter saying that, you don't defend these songs. I said, no, don't put words in my mouth. Simply, you need to acknowledge that nothing that I said in that interview or at any point could be interpreted as bigoted. So I now have an official letter from the First Minister of Scotland, and I think I may be the only person in Scotland who has a document for the government which says I'm not a bigot.
Good for you. You know what? If the Focus tries to pull you up on it, you can refer to it. Just say here, the first minister.
You go.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'll be on my way. That is
So
that
that's
is
my
fantastic.
story.
That is fantastic.
Okay.
You know what? Let's keep up the fight so that everybody in Scotland can get that same letter, and we can be done with this focus in nonsense, and we can just go on just supporting our football teams, and hopefully move towards independence, and just have a better society for everybody. But Jeanette, keep up the great work. We're 100% behind you, and hopefully we can call on you again in the future. To get an update on things. Would that be all right?
If you've not had enough. Okay. Listen, thanks, Graham. Thanks for letting us on. And please get your people to email and get in touch.
We'll do. Thanks so much, Jeanette. All the best.
Bye.
That is Jeanette Finley that just joined us. And I'm having an adrenaline rush. I know the Rev is too. But, Jeanette Finley to me is a hero. Just seeing, I referenced it a couple times, her speaking at George Square, her speaking in several other forums, and just everything that she does for the club. I mean, she's amazingly smart, an amazing mind. She's very sharp and, incredibly genuine. And that's something that, for people who stick their head above the parapet, that's something that we can always use more and more of. She's an example for us all. So we wish her nothing but the best. But as you heard, even if you are not in Scotland, even if you're not Scottish, even if you don't have an MSP, go to the Scottish ministers and send them an email. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to send them an email that, I would send to, some of the, I would send it to Bashar al-Assad, stop gassing your people. Alex Salmond, I want letters sent to every person in Scotland saying that nothing that they said is bigoted. You know what? Send one to the Rev, too. Dear Rev. Or maybe we'll have to use your Christian name. Dear Ezekiel.
Hey, you kidding me? You have to send me that? I know that.
Dear Ezekiel, you are not a bigot. Hugs and kisses, Alex Salmond. I think you should frame that.
That is a pretty good story. I like that story.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, so hopefully we can have her back very, very soon. But, you heard it. If you're a shareholder and, for whatever reason, it's just not the top of your mind, or, you just can't get to the AGM, and you agree, with the resolutions that Celtic should pay all employees a living wage, that, Celtic should investigate should call on UEFA to investigate the SFA's handling of issuing Rangers a license. If you agree with their resolution in proposing a fan member to the board, in terms of a liaison, proxy your votes to the Celtic Trust. It's right there on the website. It can't be any easier. It's so easy I could figure it out. It's the CelticTrust.net. Get on there, and you can join up with the Celtic Trust as I did, become a member. It's £10 a year, and the donation goes to support their causes. And you heard it straight from her. Any overage, any profit goes to charity. So that your money is going to a good place one way or the other. And she's fighting on behalf of the supporters who continually get lifted for singing songs, which is just absolutely atrocious. You can call the Green Brigade whatever you want, or you can refer to the away supporters in any way that you want. But in a modern democratic republic, a society, of free people, to sing a song and be arrested for it, come on, let's get a grip. So, you heard it right there. That's exactly what we need to be doing. If you're in Scotland, send those emails to your MSPs. Make sure that, listen, we want to be a self-governing society. That includes holding those that represent you accountable, letting them know how you feel about these issues. Make sure that, you get those emails out there, and again, the democratic process. Vote if you're a shareholder at Celtic. They may have more votes than, any of us all put together, but we can at least send the message. If it's just another AGM where 2,000 votes are tallied and, it's underwhelming at best, essentially we are telling the board that, oh yeah, no, it's fine. Just keep paying, all of your employees below the living wage, and we'll keep food banks open. 2013. We'll just, keep this system where food banks are a necessity and the chief executive is paid nearly £1 million. That's okay. Let's not do that. Let's vote. And let them know that that's not acceptable, including you, Rev.
I will. I am going to send an email.
Yeah, So that's pretty much it. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I think we had a bit of an echo there, but hopefully it didn't detract. I certainly don't think it detracted from anything. Just fascinating interview with Jeanette today. So we just can't thank her enough. Again, all the best to Paul Larkin. Today is his Glasgow Asterisk Years book launch. And so we wish him all the best, and all the band pods that are in attendance there. I know Paul Lee is there on the Swally. So best to Paul Lee. You can find him at St. Sixtus. Thanks to Yampi as well as always getting in touch. And Dr. J, he had the stats. He made the case. And man, this was a show full of ranting, Rev.
A bit, but, productive this time, I think.
Well, hey, needs must, It's an incendiary time with lots of important topics. And I am going to take them up. Okay, so prediction time, Rev. Do the right thing.
1-1.
Good man. I'm going to go for 1-0. I don't think that Ajax has any of the teeth. They lost once again today, 1-0 to Vitesse. Vitesse. Every time I read it quickly, it looks like Vidal Sassoon. So Vidal Sassoon won, Ajax 0. I'm going to go for the same on Wednesday. Celtic 1, Ajax 0. It's going to be Sammy. He's going to shoot the bows and arrows all over the place, and we'll get out of Amsterdam. So,
or
and
is
then,
it going to be actually you? You're going to dress up as Sam Ross, and then you're going to hop on Veronica.
Look at you! Yes, I did dress up as Sam Ross for Halloween again, and the kids loved it. They came to the door and said, "Where's Sam Ross?" Shoot my bow and arrow. I tweeted a couple of pictures. There was lots of candy left, and you can check that out on our Facebook page or BTW Celtic Show. Me dressed up as Sam Ross, full kit wanker. So 3 points, driver's seat, and then we welcome Milan to paradise, and we will put them to the sword, mate. And I will be in attendance. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait. I'm going to be attending the Aberdeen game, and then we have Paul Larkin's Edinburgh book launch that I will be hosting, emceeing. I'll be spinning. DJ Graham on the ones and twos. It's going to be a fantastic time, and then going to the Wolf Tones concert. Special thank you to Eddie Cantwell for sorting us out. Good man, Coatbridge. And hopefully I know what my name is at the end of that night. Hopefully I wake up with a roof over my head. And then the Milan game, and then I come back. So looking forward to that.
Cool beans.
What else, Rev? Anything else?
That's it for me.
You're on the business end of your wedding planning, aren't you?
Yeah.
How's that going? It doesn't sound like it's enthralling.
You getting a hotel yet?
Yeah, I'm sorting it out.
All right.
Yeah.
You got till tomorrow.
Yeah. Come on, I'm in like Flynn, baby.
We need your 3 nights.
Oh, okay. All right. I get 7 drunken nights.
Take it. Do it.
You didn't pick that up at all.
Nope.
When I walked home on a Friday night, as drunk could be. Nothing?
Not that one,
All right, Rev, we got some work to do. Okay, so thank you again to Dr. J, to Scotty, and special thank you to Jeanette Finley. It was fantastic. Really appreciate her spending some time on Saturday evening to inform us of what's going on with the trust. I say 1-0. And I'm confident going into it. 1-1 today, but not the end of the world. So taking us out as always is Shane McGowan and the Pogues. Rev, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Rev.
And that's goodbye for me. Hail, hail, and keep the faith. We'll talk to you soon.
The island, it is silent now, but the ghosts still haunt the waves. And a torch lights up a famished man who fortune could not save. Did you work upon the railroads? Did you ride the streets of crime? Were your dollars from the White House? Were they from the 5 and dime? the old songs taught to cheer you, and it does still make you cry. Did you count the months and years, or did your teardrops quickly dry? I know 15 was not to be on a cabin ship. I came here and I never even got so far that they could change my name. Thousands are sailing across the western ocean to a land of opportunity that some of them will never see. Fortune prevailing across the western ocean, their bellies full, their spirits free. They'll break the chains of poverty and they'll dance. In Manhattan's desert twilight, in the dead of afternoon, we stepped hand in hand on Broadway, like the first man on the moon. And a blackbird broke the silence as you whistled, it's so sweet. And in Brendan Behan's footsteps, I danced up and down the street. And we said goodnight to Broadway, giving it our best regards. Took our hats to Mr. Cohen, dear old Times Square's favorite bird. Then we raised a glass to JFK